They left me in a nursing home on my wedding anniversary. I thought my life was over, until I found her final letter. What it revealed changed everything. This isn't just a story about loss, it's about the love that finds us when we've given up. Before we begin, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and turn on notifications. Stories like this only work when shared, so let's make sure no one misses this journey. The forgotten anniversary. The day they left me at Maplewood, the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or snow. Fat, wet flakes stuck to the windshield of David's car as we pulled up to the brick building with its too cheerful sign, Maplewood Senior Living, where family takes care of family. I almost laughed. If this was family taking care of family, then I didn't know what abandonment looked like. David kept his eyes on the road, his fingers tapping the steering wheel like he was counting down the seconds until he could leave. Beside him, his wife, Lisa, scrolled through her phone, her lips pressed into a thin line. Neither of them spoke. The silence was worse than any argument. At least an argument would have meant they still saw me as a person, not just a problem to be dealt with. "You'll like it here," David finally said, his voice too bright, too forced. "They've got bingo nights. And a garden." I didn't answer. My chest felt too tight, like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs and pulled. Today was June 14th. Our anniversary. 45 years since Evelyn had walked down the aisle in that lace dress she'd sewn herself, her hands shaking as she slipped the ring onto my finger. "Forever," she'd whispered. But forever had ended 7 years ago when the cancer took her. And now, on the day that should have been ours, my own son was dumping me in a place where strangers would change my diapers and feed me pureed carrots. The wheelchair they brought out for me squeaked as the nurse, Rachel, her name tag said, helped me into it. She had kind eyes, the kind that didn't pretend this was anything but what it was. "First days are tough," she murmured, adjusting the blanket over my legs. "But you'll settle in." I wanted to tell her I didn't want to settle in. I wanted to go home, to the house Evelyn and I had bought after the wedding, the one with the creaky porch steps and the lilac bushes she'd planted along the fence. But David had already sold it. "Too much upkeep," he'd said. What he really meant was too much of Mom in every room. They wheeled me past a common area where a few residents sat slumped in front of a blaring TV. One woman clutched a doll to her chest, rocking it like a baby. Another man stared blankly at the wall, his mouth hanging open. A sour smell hung in the air, disinfectant and something worse, something that made my stomach twist. "This is your room," Rachel said, pushing me into a small space with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a single window overlooking the parking lot. My suitcase sat on the bed, already unpacked. My clothes hung in the closet, my books lined up on the shelf. David must have done it while I was at the doctor last week. The thought made my throat burn. He couldn't even let me pack my own things. "I'll let you get comfortable," Rachel said, squeezing my shoulder before slipping out. Alone, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the only thing I'd managed to hide from David, the framed photo of Evelyn and me on our wedding day. Her smile was wide, her dark curls escaping from under her veil. My thumb traced the edge of the frame, the glass cool against my skin. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I promised I'd never leave our home." A knock at the door made me stiffen. Rachel stepped back in, holding a folded piece of paper. "This was in your file," she said, handing it to me. "The family must have missed it." I unfolded it slowly. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the handwriting achingly familiar. "For James if he ever needs reminding." Evelyn's words. Evelyn's hand. My breath caught. This wasn't just any note, it was the stationery we'd bought in Paris on our last trip before she got sick. The trip where she'd hidden her coughing fits, where she'd insisted on climbing the Eiffel Tower even though her legs shook with every step. Why had she written this? And why had it been tucked away in some file, forgotten for years? My hands trembled as I turned the envelope over. No stamp. No postmark. Just my name in her looping script. I should have waited. Should have savored it. But I couldn't. I tore it open. The letter inside was short. Only 3 lines. "James, if you're reading this, it means you've lost your way. But you haven't lost me. Follow the music, my love. I left it all for you." I read it twice. 3 times. The words didn't make sense. Follow the music? Evelyn hadn't played the piano in years. And what did she mean she'd left it all? A noise outside the door made me look up. Rachel stood there, her expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" she asked. I folded the letter quickly, shoving it back into the envelope. "Fine," I lied. But nothing was fine. Because for the first time since Evelyn died, I felt something other than grief. I felt hunted. And the worst part? I had no idea what was coming. Secrets in the margins. The night after I found Evelyn's letter, I didn't sleep. The fluorescent light above my bed hummed like a trapped insect, casting long shadows across the walls. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her handwriting, those looping letters, that faint smudge of ink where her pen had hesitated. Follow the music. What music? The piano we'd sold years ago? The old jazz records gathering dust in David's garage? By dawn, my fingers had traced the edges of the envelope so many times the paper had started to fray. Nurse Rachel found me still in my wheelchair, the letter clutched in my lap like a prayer. "You're up early," she said, setting a tray of pills and applesauce on my bedside table. Her eyes flicked to the envelope, then away just as fast. Too fast. I swallowed hard. "Rachel, did you know my wife?" The question hung between us. For a second I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she sighed, sinking onto the edge of my bed. The mattress groaned under her weight. "Not well," she admitted. "But she volunteered here back when I first started. Played piano for the residents on Sundays." She smiled faintly. "Your Evelyn had this way of making even the most broken people feel whole again." My throat tightened. That was Evelyn, her hands on the keys, her voice soft as she sang along to Moon River, for the dementia patients who couldn't remember their own names but still tapped their feet to the melody. Rachel hesitated, then lowered her voice. "A few months before she passed, she asked me a favor. Said if a James Whittaker ever ended up here, I should make sure he got something." She nodded at the envelope. I figured that was it. The air left my lungs. Evelyn had known. Known I'd wind up in this place alone. Known I'd need whatever this was. I opened the letter again, scanning those 3 cryptic lines. Follow the music. And then, like a lightning strike, I understood. Not the piano. Not the records. The apartment. Our first place together, a tiny 4th-floor walk-up on Elm Street with a fire escape that sagged in the middle. We'd been poor as church mice back then, but God, we'd been happy. Evelyn used to drag our old RCA radio onto the fire escape on summer nights, tuning it to some staticky jazz station while we danced barefoot in the rain. "This is our song," she'd whisper every time, even if it was a different song each night. The building had to be long gone by now. But I had to see. "Rachel," I said slowly, "I need to get out of here. Just for an hour." She stiffened. "Mr. Whittaker, you can't just." "I'll sign myself out." "Am I?" "Against medical advice." I'd heard the term on some hospital show David used to watch. "You won't get in trouble." Her lips pressed together. For a long moment I thought she'd refuse. Then she glanced at the photo of Evelyn on my nightstand, the wedding picture, and something in her face softened. "1 hour," she muttered, grabbing my jacket from the closet. "And if anyone asks, you were at physical therapy." The cab ride to Elm Street took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. The driver, a kid with a lip ring and a Deadpool tattoo, kept eyeing me in the rearview like he expected me to croak before we got there. "You sure this is the address, Pops?" he asked as we pulled up to a vacant lot choked with weeds. My stomach dropped. No brick walk-up. No sagging fire escape. Just cracked pavement and a faded sign announcing, "Future site of luxury condos." I stumbled out of the cab, my cane sinking into the mud. This couldn't be it. This couldn't. Then I saw him. An old man hunched on the sidewalk, his grimy sleeping bag rolled up beside him. His beard was more gray than brown, his skin leathered by decades of hard living. But his eyes, sharp and clear, locked onto mine like he'd been waiting. "You're him?" he rasped. "The piano man's husband." The world tilted. "What?" He grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "Evelyn. She said you'd come eventually. Told me to give you this when you did." From inside his filthy coat, he produced a small, rusted key. "Paid me $50 to hold on to it. Said it was important." I reached for it, my fingers trembling. The key was ice cold. When did she give this to you?" The man scratched his beard. "Year or so before she died. Maybe more. Time gets funny when you're on the street." He squinted at me. "She loved you, you know. Talked about you all the time. Said you were the only person who ever really heard her music." Something hot spilled down my cheeks. I hadn't cried since the funeral. Not even when David told me he was selling the house. But now, standing in the shadow of a building that no longer existed, holding a key from a ghost, I broke. The old man didn't pat my back or offer empty comforts. Just waited until I could breathe again, then pointed down the block. Third National Bank still there. "That's where she said you'd need to go. A safety deposit box." Of course. Evelyn had always been meticulous about important documents. But as I turned to leave, the man grabbed my wrist. His grip was stronger than I expected. She left something else, he said quietly. A message. Said to tell you. He frowned like he was struggling to remember exact words. The baby song is the key to the rest. The world went very still. The baby. Our baby. The one we'd lost in '75. The one Evelyn had wept for every April 3rd until the day she died. Except she'd never called it the baby. Always by name. Sophia. I looked down at the key in my palm, my vision blurring. Whatever Evelyn had left for me, it wasn't just about the past. It was about a secret she'd kept for 45 years. And it was waiting for me at the bank. The key to everything. The Third National Bank hadn't changed since the last time Evelyn and I had walked through its heavy brass doors back in the 90s. Same marble floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Same musty smell of old money and older paperwork. The only difference was the bulletproof glass now separating customers from tellers, a sign of the times that would have made Evelyn cluck her tongue in disapproval. My cane tapped loudly as I approached the front desk, drawing glances from a pair of suited bankers. The receptionist, a young woman with a name tag reading Megan, looked up with the polite, vacant smile reserved for elderly men who probably wandered in by accident. Can I help you, sir? I slid the rusted key across the counter. Safety deposit box. Number 714. Her smile faltered when she saw the key. That's an older model. Let me check our records. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. Then she froze. Oh. What? This box was rented in 1975. Paid in advance for 50 years. Her eyes darted to me. Under the name Sophia Whitaker. The floor dropped out from under me. Sophia. Our daughter's name. The name Evelyn had whispered to our stillborn child in the hospital before they took her away. The name we'd never spoken aloud again. Until now. I'm her father, I heard myself say. Megan hesitated, then picked up the phone. I'll need to call my manager. 20 agonizing minutes later, after signatures, ID checks, and hushed phone calls, they led me into the vault. Box 714 was smaller than I expected, tucked in the very back behind newer, shinier containers. The key turned with a stubborn screech, like it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside lay three things. A faded Polaroid of Evelyn, impossibly young, holding a swaddled newborn in a hospital bed. Her smile was radiant, but her eyes were red raw from crying. A birth certificate for Sophia Marie Whitaker, dated April 3, 1975, with the word deceased stamped across it in angry red ink. And beneath those, a newer envelope labeled simply, for when you're ready. My hands shook as I reached for it. The photo and certificate were from the past, but this letter? The paper was crisp, the ink fresh. Evelyn had been here after the hospital. After they told us our baby was gone. The manager cleared his throat. Sir, would you like some privacy? I barely nodded before he retreated, closing the vault door behind him. Alone with my wife's ghost, I tore open the envelope. James, if you're reading this, it means you finally know the truth. Our daughter didn't die that day. My parents paid the doctor to say she did. They sent her away, to a Catholic adoption agency in Boston. I only found out when the nurse slipped me a note as they wheeled me out. A sob clawed its way up my throat. All these years. All those anniversaries where Evelyn had disappeared for hours, claiming she needed to visit the cemetery. She hadn't been mourning at a gravesite. She'd been searching. The letter continued. I looked for her, my love. Every year on her birthday. But the records were sealed, and by the time laws changed, the trail was cold. Then last year the cancer came back. So I did the only thing I could, left this for you to finish. The key to finding her is in our song. You'll know which one. Always yours, Evelyn. Our song. Not Moon River. Not any of the jazz standards we danced to. There was only one song that belonged to us alone, the lullaby Evelyn had composed while pregnant, humming it nightly to her swelling belly. Sophia's song, we'd called it. A simple melody in C major that she'd never written down, never played for anyone else. A melody that, if our daughter was out there, she might somehow know. I was stuffing everything into my jacket when the vault door opened. Not the manager, Rachel stood there, her face pale. James, she breathed. Thank God. I've been calling your phone for. Her gaze dropped to the birth certificate in my hands. Oh. The drive back to Maplewood passed in a blur. Rachel didn't speak until we pulled into the parking lot, her fingers tight on the wheel. That homeless man, she said suddenly. The one who gave you the key? He mentioned a woman came by last month asking about Evelyn. Said she looked. Rachel swallowed hard. Said she looked like her. The air left my lungs. Did he get a name? No. But he said something else. Rachel turned to me, her eyes bright. She was carrying a violin case. The world tilted. Evelyn hadn't played violin. But Sophia's song, that lullaby, could easily be played on one. Somewhere out there, our daughter wasn't just alive. She was searching too. And she was closer than either of us knew. The dance in the rain. The violin case changed everything. For 3 sleepless nights, I turned that detail over in my mind like a puzzle piece that wouldn't fit. Evelyn never played violin. Neither had anyone in our families. But Rachel's words kept echoing. She looked like her. Carried a violin case. On the 4th morning, Maplewood's weekly music therapy session gave me the answer. A young woman, early 20s, all bright eyes and nervous energy, wheeled in a cart of instruments for the residents. When she lifted a violin to demonstrate simple scales, my pulse roared in my ears. "Can you play requests?" I interrupted louder than I meant to. She blinked. "Sure. What would you?" "Something in C major. A lullaby." I hummed the first 5 notes of Sophia's song, the melody rusty but unmistakable. The girl's bow froze midair. "How do you know that?" Every hair on my arm stood up. "You recognize it?" "My adoptive mom taught it to me." She lowered the violin, studying my face with sudden intensity. She said my birth mother wrote it for me." The room spun. I gripped my cane so hard the wood creaked. This wasn't just any musician. This was Claire, the girl who came every Thursday. The one who always lingered at Evelyn's old piano in the activities room. Rachel appeared at my side like a ghost, her hand steadying my shoulder. "Mr. Whitaker? You're white as a sheet." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because Claire had Evelyn's nose, Evelyn's chin. And when she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, that exact same quick, impatient gesture Evelyn used to make. The girl, my granddaughter, was still talking. "It's weird, right? I never met my birth mom, but this song's been with me my whole..." Her eyes locked on the wedding photo I kept in my wheelchair side pocket. The color drained from her face. That's the woman from my adoption papers." Time stopped. Then Claire did something that shattered me completely. She reached into her violin case and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "She left this for me too. The same stationery. The same handwriting. For Sophia's daughter when she's ready to hear the music." I don't remember crossing the room. Don't remember the tears streaming down my face as I showed her the birth certificate, the Polaroid, Evelyn's final letter. But I'll never forget the way Claire's hands shook as she opened her own envelope, or the choked sob she made when she read what was inside. Because Evelyn hadn't just written to her. She'd left sheet music. The full, completed version of Sophia's song, with a new final measure added just months before her death. Claire played it right there in the activities room, her bow trembling but true. The residents who usually dozed through therapy sessions sat up straighter. Nurse Rachel pressed both hands to her mouth. And when Claire reached that last, soaring note, the one Evelyn had written knowing she'd never meet her granddaughter, something miraculous happened. Outside, the first fat drops of a summer rain began to fall. Just like they had on a fire escape 45 years ago. Claire helped me onto the patio, where we stood together watching the storm roll in. She didn't ask for explanations or apologies. Just slipped her arm through mine and said quietly, "Tell me about her." So I did. I told her about the way Evelyn laughed with her whole body. About how she could never cook without burning something. About the time she marched into a fancy restaurant bathroom to give me my engagement ring because she couldn't wait another second. And as the rain soaked through our clothes, Claire began to hum our song, the one that had brought us all together at last. If this story found its way into your heart, do something Evelyn would have loved. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because love, real love, it doesn't end. It just finds new ways to sing. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the melodies that lead us home.